which suddenly starts making our business actually non-viable. So one of the things there, particularly if we start looking at the two examples are given where you're selling and not really concerned about whether we can deliver, or it's the sales versus the underwriting department, is having a set of shared OKRs. So we actually share the outcomes and key results, both from a sales perspective and, let's say, from an underwriting perspective, depending on what the overall context is. But also what we start seeing happening in agile sales departments, and Marina, she actually has a nice sort of about 30-page PDF that you can download. I'll again just put the link in there. She talks about she talks about, instead of individual, the first, and setting sales target, first let's understand the customer. So the best way to understand the customer is to go in with the IT department in the example you used, Jonathan, and let's get to understand what are the customer's wants, needs, and jobs to be done, and how best can we meet those wants and needs, and what is a realistic time frame. And then let's start iterating, those 2-week sprints. After 2 weeks, let's show them a wireframe of what we've developed so far. Another 2 weeks, we show them an MVP, and we gradually get to where, not gradually, we quickly get to where they want to be. So it's much more around teamwork within the sales department and collaboration across the business, where sales traditionally have been very target driven. You've given me a target, and remember, at the end of the day, whatever you incentivize, that's the behavior you're going to get. Yeah. So if I'm incentivizing individual targets, then I'm going to get individual behavior rather than team and collaborative behavior. So I hope that helps a bit. I will put in something for you to have a look at Marina's stuff as well.
Thanks, Dick. Put it in the chat there if you don't mind. Thank you.
So I can see your hand up. You want to add up?
Yeah, I was actually going to say one of the things that Miles has mentioned. So when we are building a product, we always talk about that's the delivery team, that's the sales team, that's the marketing team. But when you actually look at the bigger picture, we are all working to one thing. So one of the biggest things that you have to realize is the organization is operating as a whole, therefore we shouldn't separate everything. It's one of the reasons why a lot of the scaled frameworks whereby you have multiple teams contributing to get a product done have huddles frequently, because we want to know, okay, what are you doing? Are you waiting on me to do something, so that I know where the dependencies are and I know what to do? So there's no reason for us to treat sales differently. It's also part of that organization. And if we want them to be as transparent with us, then we need to include them as part of this team. This is what we're going to do. Because one of the biggest complaints I've heard, especially on the development side, is, sales promised this, and we don't want to make promises based off of work that we are not going to be doing. So it's very important to look at everything from a bigger picture as a whole and figure out how we can make everything happen as a team, and not let one department run off and do their own thing, and then before we know it's sort of like everybody's scrambling to reach some sort of deadline and people are unhappy. So building that relationship within the organization is very, very important. And yeah, back to the sales being competitive. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in order to create that transparency, especially when, incentives are attached. So 100% agree with Miles. If your incentives are to create this aggressive salesperson who is out to look for number one and just make a commission, then you are going to unfortunately deal with the side effects. You're hiding things from each other. I'm not going to tell you this because you're going to steal my customer. So the goal of the entire sales team, it needs to be aligned. Having a shared goal will help us have shared responsibility, and will also promote trust and transparency.
I think just to add on what Soilo and Miles have said about sales, I think generally salespeople are always interacting with the customers, always in the field, understanding what the needs of the customers are. So it comes back to the same thing. There might be you might set a target, a big bang target, unrealistic targets, but the salespeople always have to break those targets down, understand what's happening on what products do we have, what are we selling, and then constantly communicating with the business and organization that this isn't working, we have a deliverable, this isn't working, let's shift, let's change the direction. So it brings about also dynamics in how we adapt and respond to change. So we don't have to have a flexible structures and you don't have to have a very rigid structure as an organization. You have to be very ready to change based on the demands of the customers and always listening to the customers. And salespeople are the ones who are always listening to the customers, interfacing with the customers. So salespeople are very important aspect to achieving agility and interaction and interfacing with the customers. So this is just a contribution to what Miles and Sue have initially put across.
Thank you very much. We have a question from Mike. Mike, would you like to pose your question?
Hey everyone. So it wasn't really a question, it was just pretty much reiterating to what Miles and Sue said. I think one of the things that really play a pivotal role, because I'm in sales and I'm trying to break into the agile world. And I think one of the things that kind of cross each other's paths a lot of the time is that the sales team runs out and tries to impress the customer, tries to wow them. So they sometimes they oversell it a bit. And I think where you can start is have the sales team and the IT team, or have the sales team, the PO and the Scrum Master sit down and formulate a plan and say, look, this is what the customer needs. This is what their needs are. This is what their deliverables are. This is what the acceptance criteria is. And I think if you can formulate a battle plan around, your target, I think you'll be much more effective. You'll be a surgeon's tool versus just running out a salesperson and shotgun approaching it. And I think a lot of the times you get points in an organization, especially when it comes to sales and the IT team. I think that's where the biggest loggerhead or bottleneck comes in. And it speaks to really what we want to try and do is be transparent the whole way. So sit down from the get-go. It might take an hour or two, but you sit down right at the beginning and you formulate a battle plan. Everybody's transparent, everyone's on the same team, and everyone understands what's the acceptance criteria, what are the what are the wins along the way. And I think if we can work in that sort of framework, I think we'll do better.
Thank you very much, Mike, for that contribution. Since I know, Miles, you on the Agile part, you did mention that you concentrate mostly on the executive level, and I know Sue, it's on the Teams bit, and Pendo, it's on the digital transformation bit. In your individual backgrounds or individual arenas, what common hurdles or expected hurdles do most people get into when they're trying to transition into being agile?
By that you mean challenges? Okay, so not having a purpose, everybody needs to understand why. If I know why something is happening, it's easier for me to understand the action that is expected of me. And then that's another one, expectation. If you want me to go agile, whatever that might mean, I would like to know what is your expectation of me? It shouldn't just be okay, everybody, we're going agile, here's Jira. It doesn't work like that. Or everybody, we're going Scrum, we're going to have stand-up. It doesn't work like that. So it's very important to explain why we are doing that, because oftentimes you find one of the biggest challenges is people struggle to change to something that they don't understand and something that they're uncomfortable with. When you are in flight or fight mode, you will naturally do something that you're comfortable with, and that might not necessarily be something that would be conducive to the journey. But then if you take time to take the organization or the team through the journey from start to finish, speak to them, okay, this is what we want to do, this is how we want to do it, this is why we want to do it. Create an opportunity for them to, you know, give their thoughts. I don't think this is possible because, I think this is going to be hard because, and then always come back to how do we do things better? It's very difficult because most organizations, obviously, we're used to operating whereby, you know, executives tell us what's going to happen and then we just implement. But when it comes to being agile, because that requires collaboration and trust and everything that needs to come in, and togetherness, everybody needs to be involved, you are going to have that friction because I don't want to change what I'm doing. There's nothing wrong with what I'm doing. And sometimes agile is sold in, we're going agile because you're doing the wrong thing. That immediately will create conflict. It's like you're accusing me of something, but I saw nothing wrong. So definitely that resistance to change, it is one of the biggest hurdles. It is one of the hurdles that will probably stay throughout your journey. So you need like to find different ways of tackling it on different levels, but definitely resistance to change and just using tools without knowing why I'm using them, and lack of understanding as to why we are making this change, why that transition is necessary. It creates a divide rather than creating a common place for everybody to say, okay, this is what we're doing, this is why, and there is support. Having that support system for everybody. If you want to have an agile organization, you need to create an environment that is conducive to ensuring success. So you can't say we are agile, but then you have, like, I know in many banks, you have regulations from here to the North Pole that stop you from being agile, and then you're wondering why something isn't happening. So creating an environment is also one of the things that I find lots of teams struggle with. Yeah.
Yeah, so I must probably, while Sue was giving such a great answer there, I must probably change my answer about 40 times during that period because it's such a great question, such a broad question. But I just wanted to, before I get onto that, I just wanted to go back to what Mark shared. And I really enjoyed what you said there, Mark. I think one of the things we need to do more of is when we talk about cross-functional teams is, you know, bring the sales guys into a closer relationship with tech, if that's what it is, for the sales guys to understand what the challenges are for tech to overcome if we're selling something, and vice versa, for tech to understand how difficult it is to compete in a market if we're not giving the right tools and products and services to sales to sell. So that you hit it on the head. That closer relationship between everybody in the business is just key, and that's sort of also part of my answer to the being agile. But I think this week I had a discussion with one of the top banks in South Africa. We trained their executive team. When I say trained, we did a workshop with the executive team on enterprise business agility in August 2019. Okay, so we're now almost 18 months down the line, and we're now having the discussion where they say, we've been wanting to go business agility. We've been wanting to do it since that workshop. We just haven't done it. So it needs to be at when the time is right. It needs to be driven from the top down. There needs to be a business case for it, and there's enough business cases, enough reasons for it. Where I showed you those results from case studies from Scaled Agile. We need to again, you've almost got to start shocking the leadership into understanding the implications of not doing it. If they are slower, I think we're seeing that these figures on the S&P 500, etc., where companies used to sit in the S&P 500 for 28 to 30 years. Now they're lasting 12 years and they're out. So are you going to be one of those companies that just doesn't exist in the future. I was one of my favorite sayings, and I know I'm rambling because it is a bit of a broad question, but one of my favorite sayings is that, you know, you can be one of three types of companies. You can be a company that makes things happen. You can be a company that watches things happen, or you can be a company that wonders what happened. And we don't want you to be one of those that wondered what happened when you're no longer in business. So you got to, but you got to create that business case. And coming also back to this whole thing of reward and incentive, we talk a lot about servant leadership in our organizations, and there I could spend a whole day talking about that. But the one thing about servant leadership is that if we still incentivize our leaders to be command and control leaders, we will not get them to be servant leaders very easily, because they are being measured and rewarded on being command and control leaders. Is that, but I don't think the challenge comes in at the lower levels, particularly when you're dealing with knowledge workers. Knowledge workers want to be left and given autonomy to work in teams, be self-regulating, be innovative, be creative, work in a psychologically safe environment. So I don't think your challenges are really at that sort of team level. It's at the leadership level. Make sure we put the right incentives in place. And then the last thing I want to say here, that's also a really important factor. If we go agile, there's all of a sudden no need for a whole big middle management layer. Now, if you don't address that forgotten middle, the what's in it for them scenario, you're going to struggle to implement agile. They're going to get in your way. They're going to create barriers, because you all of a sudden are talking about self-regulating teams and teams of teams. You look at the structure in an agile environment, there's no middle managers, there's no supervisors, there's no middle managers, there's not even any senior managers. And if we're not addressing that issue, so we've got to address all of those systemic issues before we really start moving towards an agile organization.
Thank you very much, Sue. And Miles, I don't know if Pendo has any contribution. Pendo?
Sorry, I just had a challenge with my internet. So how can teams transition to Agile? Yeah.
What are the challenges from the digital transformation aspect? What are the challenges most teams face in terms of transitioning to being agile?
Some of the challenges, I think I'll just add on what Sue and Miles have already put across. I think like Miles has mentioned, hierarchy and a lot of bureaucracy in most organizations. So you find that for a project to start, there's talking about being agile, but there's so much documentation and approval processes that certain products have to go through before you could ship them to the customers or clients. So until certain bottlenecks like approvals and bureaucracy are dealt with and addressed, I think agility cannot be achieved. And then secondly, I'd also talk about training, constant training and feedback from the team. So train the team on how to transit, like constant training, letting the team adapt to different skills. Having a team that has single skills or skills that are not diverse really creates a certain bridge in how agility is approached. So those are some of the things that have to be looked at, and those are the challenges that most teams and then the teams that I have been in that we have faced in our transitioning to Agile.
Thank you very much, Pendo. We have a question from Joseph. It says, can you practice Scrum in a team of one person? If so, are there tools that can help one adopt Agile in their own work process? Can you practice Scrum in a team of one person? If so, are there tools that can help one adopt Agile in their own work process.
I have a counter question to that. Do you want to practice Scrum and not Agile? What do you mean by Scrum? Do you mean, can I be Agile as one person, or are you specifically zeroing in on that framework?
Joseph, if you could give us more information.
All right, thanks. Yeah, I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, shoot.
All right, okay, yeah. So actually, I didn't notice I'd already specified this as Scrum. So yeah, I just meant like, can you practice Agile on your own? Of course, it's something in a team. It has to be something that would be adopted by team managers and all that. But can you practice in a way that maybe the team moves into trying to also adopt that for the team as well? So if you were to practice alone, and of course, mastery, it always begins with maybe trying to integrate that in how you go about even just personal processes. So how, I mean, are there any tools that sort of help in self management of around work? Yeah, where you somehow adopt the agile process?
I think going back to what Miles started with, I think he mentioned you're only as agile as the least agile person on the team. So that already implies that there is need for each person individually to have an agile mindset. So in that sense, definitely, you can be an agile person, but that all depends on what you're trying to achieve as well. So when it comes to being agile, we've talked about how it's not about tools per se. The tools are just a medium to help you do something. It all comes back to what you're trying to achieve. So say, for example, you are working on a project, you are an entrepreneur, you are a one-man business, you're working on something, you still have goals, you still have targets, which means you still need to plan. You still need to rethink those plans. You still need to adjust those plans. So I would say an agile individual who is being agile is somebody who constantly looks at what they are doing, makes sure that when they're aware of the changes that are happening around them, and they're able to adapt to those changes as well. An agile person is also somebody that embodies values and principles that we have. If you want to talk about there's certain things like courage and there's different values in the different frameworks, but in the Agile manifesto itself, it all comes down to your behavior. If your mind is not agile, even if you're using Jira or Trello or whatever tool there is, then it's almost as if it's coming to it's almost as it's no point, like it's there, but you don't know how to use it. So I would say, yes, a person can definitely be agile. I would say if you want to know how, you could definitely go back and start with the manifesto, since we are celebrating 20 years since it was created, and read and understand what they are saying there. They're definitely not pointing to tools. But if you like tools to help you along the journey, then definitely having if you want to have a backlog, instead of having a product backlog, you have a personal backlog. You use things like personal Kanban, for example. These are the things that I would like to achieve. They are now moving into I'm managing the flow of what I need to do. This is what's in to do. This needs to be done at a certain stage. This is what's in progress. This is what has been done. No, this is still pending. All of those different things can be used. Miles?
I think that you answered that really well, Suila. I actually pulled my hand down as you said that last bit, but I just wanted to add to that again. Remember I spoke earlier on about sort of those 4 big measures that I spoke about, which is value, quality, flow, and happiness. I think you can achieve that from an individual perspective as well if you're driving, agility. But again, it would depend on the context of where you at, Joseph. obviously within Agile, what we drive is the whole cross-functional team capability, but there are going to be occasions where individuals have to work within that. But I think the one thing that Sue said that was pretty, I so often hear of, somebody will say, yeah, but my family, and I actually heard it again today, my family and I, we get together at the beginning of each week and we set a backlog of, the chores that have to be done this week, and we put together our little Kanban board, and we go and we measure the chores against that. So there are tools out there, but again, I think what Sue said, that's so critical. It's so much more about that mindset. And if we look at those measures, what value am I adding as I go? How much quicker can I do things without downplaying the quality and the value part of it? How much quicker can stuff flow through the system? So there is a lot, but but I must say, Joseph, when I first saw that question, I was going to pretend as though my internet had gone down, because it is really a great question. I really liked it. It came from a different view, and thanks for asking that. It really is a great question.
If I can add one last thing is, out of all the frameworks, the one particular ceremony I would take and apply on anything is a retrospective, right? You need to take a moment frequently, not like once in 6 months, because then like things have changed. You need to take a moment to look at what you have, the work that you have done over a period of time. That can be, if you want, you can do a daily one. Okay, what have I achieved today? What went well? What didn't work well? What am I going to do better? Or what are my goals for the future? How am I going to get to that? So definitely having that time to take that time to introspect yourself and to have a retrospective about what you want to achieve, and do it very often so that you know exactly what changes you need to put in place so that you could still add value to whatever it is you're doing, whether that's business related or not. I remember I got advice once from one of my colleagues, and they said that in a relationship, it's very important to do retrospectives. And I laughed at the time, but I totally understood what she was saying, in that even in a relationship, with your husband, wife, partner, brother, sister, sometimes you need to take a moment to say, okay, especially when you've had a fight, like, oh my goodness, we had a fight. What actually happened? What could I have done better? And it's always important to always say, what could I have done better? Take accountability for your own thoughts, your own actions, rather than focus on what somebody else did. So I think even in as a one-man show, one-man person doing your own thing, definitely do a retrospective.
All right, thank you. That answers my question, and I like how it brings out the fact that you can always be, there are always many opportunities to still be agile. Thanks.
Thank you. I like the retrospective bit. I think it's something that I was also advised by a life coach. So I do it on a weekly basis, sometimes on a daily basis, if it's something that I really need to achieve faster. Okay, so we have a question from Catherine. So Catherine says, so if you get rid of middle management, how do you ever grow in your career? I know I don't want to be a team me ever forever. And what are the chances of going from a team member to a senior management in one shot? I guess the question is starting from Miles, when you said that sometimes there is no need to keep the middle management level.
Yeah, great question. So I don't know. Yeah, so I think that firstly, I'm not going to keep middlemen, and please, this might sound a bit harsh, what I'm about to say. I'm not going to keep middle managers around just so that there's a career path up the ladder. We need to keep people in positions because they add value to the organization. Having said that, there's two ways that one goes along a career. We start talking about career mosaics rather than career paths in Agile. And a career mosaic means that I'm a tester today, and that's a deep skill I have is in testing. But I want to start developing what I call my T-shaped skills. So I want to still be, a deep expert in testing, but I want to develop enough expertise in development that I can also develop, but I'm not necessarily the expert. So those are our T-shaped skills: deep expertise in testing, great, good enough expertise in development. Then now I'm sitting as a team member, but I look and I see there's a job as a Scrum Master. I think I could do a good job as a Scrum Master. So now I assess you and see what is the difference between where you're currently at and your capabilities and what a Scrum Master requires, and we start developing you to become a Scrum Master or a product owner, etc., etc. Once we're in that phase, now all of a sudden, remember even though we don't necessarily talk about it from a hierarchical perspective, if you look, and again, I'm going to reference the Scaled Agile framework here. If you're a Scrum Master and you want to move up the ladder, you can then become a release train engineer. Remember, that's the Scrum Master of Scrum Masters, basically, within an Agile release train. Or if you're a product owner, you can become a product manager. And also then you've got the opportunity to go to solution train engineer, etc. So there are opportunities to move upwards if that's where your intent is. We're seeing a lot of, and it is a generalization, and it's definitely not applicable to everybody, but you're seeing a lot more people today that are entering the workplace that are looking for fulfilling jobs rather than jobs that have titles. So jobs that actually add real value, that are challenging, that you work in a psychologically safe environment, etc. So the last thing I'm going to say, and it also actually comes back to some of the things about moving towards agility as an organization. You can go into some really big organizations and you'll find that parts of the organization are very agile with these network teams of cross-collaborative teams, cross-functional teams. But you could go into another part of the business that's still very hierarchical because that makes sense for them to be hierarchical. Remember, Agile is not something that is necessarily run right across the business. And I'm not saying it's not a good thing for the whole business. It can be, but there's in many instances in your call centers don't necessarily benefit from Agile, let's say, as much as your software department, your tech department. So there is still going to be opportunities for middle managers in certain parts of the business, but I do think we need to move more towards self-regulation and less towards people managing other people. I think it was Steve Jobs and Lee Iacocca both said, why do we hire the smartest people that we can and then tell them what to do?
I think if I can add to that, I would totally say it depends, Catherine, to your question. I was in an organization 2.5, 3 years ago, whereby what had happened was they had taken middle management, and instead of leaving them to do what they do, which is manage, they had actually redefined their role within the organization to be more of an enablement team. So their responsibility was to figure out how they can enable the teams below to do what they were supposed to do, but still maintain autonomy. So when we talk about getting rid of middle management, we need to focus on why we are exploring that idea and if there's ways to remove the impediments that are being created. So what you often find, we talked about bureaucracy earlier, we talked about command and control earlier. Oftentimes with middle management, you find that there is this, especially if there has been no change management that has happened, they want to hold on to a certain level of power, and sometimes that tends to impede the teams below because, you know, you need my permission. I didn't agree to that. No, you're supposed to do it like this. Did you do it like that? And that will defeat the purpose of creating a self-managing or a self-organizing team. So I think it's very important to look at the roles that we have traditionally and identify what value they are bringing, identify where they might be causing an impediment, and think about how we need to redefine what they're doing. Sometimes that may mean that, you know, you're going to maybe move them around, or like Miles was saying, for example, you can move the next level. But the whole idea is that we want to create an organization that enables their teams to do the best that they can without micromanaging them to death. And I think that's the key point that we need to consider. So if you are in a place whereby, you know, you want to grow, whether you're a Scrum Master, an Agile project manager, definitely that you will always have career progression. Some people say after being a Scrum Master, the next thing they want to do is Agile coach. That's up to you. Some people actually move out of being a Scrum Master to become a manager of some sort, but taking those skills with them wherever they go. So that's also up to you. So there's nothing that dictates, you know, the way that, you know, you're in grade 1, so you're going to be in grade 2. You're in varsity first year, you're going to be in second year. It's not always like that, especially within the Agile world. So there's different things that you can do in order to progress that career path. Pendo?
Yeah, I was actually about to put my hand down because you had talked about what I was about to say, but I think it's also depends with the nature of the organization. When we talk about removing middle management, it's just trying to get streamline and remove as many processes as you can to the top, because I think most organizations have so many levels of for you to get to the top. So you find there's a middle manager, senior manager, chief, and then there's the CCO, the CEO. So trying to eliminate those the levels at which management operates enables a certain level, enables agility in a team. I think, as well as eliminating command and control. Leading smart people, I think in this age is needs a very modern way of working. So you don't have to, usually when there's so much, when there's a lot of different levels of management, you walk to work, you have what to do, someone tells you what to do, it becomes less of self-organizing, and Agile tries to promote self-organizing teams that are motivated, teams that are accountable for the work that they're doing. So trying to eliminate that level of micromanagement, as Sui put it, allowing the teams to take ownership for the products or the work that they're doing, and also leaving them to self-organize, and just enabling the team, giving them that environment where they can work and be be effective in their work, I think is quite key in the modern ways of working, and eliminating the middle management.
Thank you very much.
Awesome, thank you.
We only have 10 minutes to go, so we'll only take 2 last questions. I'll pose the second last one, then the last one will come from Sharon. So my question is, how does culture or values play a role in transformation, whether it's as an organization or on individual level? How does culture and values play a role in transformation?
Sorry, Maj, you can go ahead.
You go, Suela.
Okay, cool. So when we are talking about an organization, we always refer to what their culture is. It's in our culture to do these certain practices within our organization. As an organization, in order for us to achieve certain things, we need to have values that are important to us and that are clear and transparent throughout everything that we have. So your values will set the base and the foundation for whatever it is that you'll be doing in that organization, whether it be creating teams, whether it be delivering products, where it will be making sure that the organization is running. So values will always set, it will be the backbone or the foundation of everything that you do going forward, and it will contribute to creating a culture that we want. For example, if we say we want to have we want our organization to be identified by the way that we collaborate, then we go back to, okay, what do we need to collaborate? What do we value in order for us to get to this point whereby there's collaboration? Then things will come in like trust. We want to trust each other. The communication, we want that to happen as well. So I would say it's definitely the backbone and the foundation of whatever you do in the organization. I hope I answered that properly. Miles?
Yeah, I think I like the word that you used there, Sue, particularly about the foundation. I think where many organizations go wrong is that the leadership set out what they believe the culture and the values should be. And they get in consultants and they design this whole culture journey and values journey, etc., etc., etc. Culture and values is not written on a piece of paper. Culture and values is what actually exists in your organization. So no matter what you've written, it's your actions. The leaders need to lead by example. They need to walk the talk. So if we say we're going to have a psychological safety or we're going to be servant leaders, yet Miles makes a mistake and you jump all over me and, you know, and we don't learn from that mistake, then that's the culture of the business. The culture of the business is that there is no psychological safety, irrespective of what you put on a piece of paper. And I think far too often organizations forget about that. I've been waiting for the 1st of May this year. The 1st of May this year, I will have been consulting for 20 years. Okay. Often I've helped organizations with values. And one of the things I immediately say to them, let's not go set 9 values, 7 values, 6 values. Let's just start off with 2 values. And then once we've set those 2 values that are most important to us, let's go away and live them for two months and see if we actually can live the values we're setting ourselves. So if one of our values is transparency, and we're sitting at a town hall and somebody asks the CEO, so what is it that you earn every month? And you say, well, that's none of your business. Well, then transparency is not one of your values. You could put guardrails around what transparency means, but be very specific and clear around what things mean and how you behave and how you act, because that is actually the culture. Your culture changes every single day. And it's because of the way that we act. So critical, but as Sue said, totally agree, it's the foundation.
Thank you very much, Sue and Miles. I think we can now take the question from Sharon. Sharon, would you like to pose your question to the panelists?
I think her audio is not connected.
Okay. Whilst we are waiting for Sharon, maybe we could take a quick one. There's one from Jonathan which says, can you briefly define what servant leader is? Can you briefly define servant leader?
I think so. So maybe before I answer that, I see Mark Everett also has his hand up. So when we get a chance, but so servant leader, yeah, I'm not necessarily going to put it there. A servant leader is somebody that should be providing the environment, the tools, the knowledge, etc., that enables their team to perform optimally. A servant leader is, so the difference between a command and control leader and a servant leader, command and control, I tell you what to do. So we're going to develop a piece of software for the next 2 weeks. I'm going to, as a command and control leader, I'm going to tell you exactly how to develop it. So this is the way you do it. No, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. Whereas a servant leader says, okay, this is what we need the tool to do. You've got, can you do it in 2 weeks? Yes, we can do it in 2 weeks. Do you have the environment? Do you have the tools? Do you have everything you need to be able to develop it? Yes, I do. Okay. And then you let the team go away and develop the tool. Let them decide how to do it, not you telling them how to do it. Remember, we hired them because we believe that they have the capability to do that. So let's not tell them what to do. Let's provide an enabling environment. And I see that Sue's put there as well, really good. Lead through serving. So they're there to enable and serve the team to deliver for the customer.
Thank you very much, Miles. I think you said Mike had his hand up. Mike?
Hey guys, thank you. Yes, just quickly to touch on what Miles has said about what a servant leader is. I don't know if you guys follow or know someone called Jocko Willink. He's a retired US SEAL, and I absolutely love him. I think he's amazing. And one of the things that he says is, he says it all the time. He says, you got to own everything in your bubble. And I think as a servant leader, as someone that is serving someone else to win. So you're leading him, you're a servant leader, you're leading an organization, you keep it simple. You prioritize and execute. Everything you do is designed for the team to win. You know, as I think as a good leader, he's not someone that sits there and bashes you and whips you to move the cart. He's the guy that's down there in the trenches with you, pushing the cart from behind. You're in the front. So when you get to the finish line, the first people that they see is you, the team. The leader's at the back of the cart. You know, no one sees him. He's pushing the cart from behind. And I think it's so important that when we everything we do is for the team, and we plan to lead, and we plan to win, and we keep it simple, and we keep things direct. And again, like Scrum and like the Agile Manifesto, we keep things simple, we keep things safe. I think everyone wins.
If I can just add something as well there, at the end of the day, is that we also need to create psychological safety for leaders to become servant leaders. Remember, they've been command and control leaders for most of their lives. And now we're asking them to almost do a 180 change in the way that they manage. So we need to create psychological safety for them to be able to transition. And then again, as I've said this before, if we incentivize them to be command and control leaders, they will not become servant leaders. So we also need to change, and that's when I spoke about the role like that HR could play, is how do we change our reward systems to be able to enable leaders to become servant leaders and be incentivized about being servant leaders rather than being incentivized about being command and control leaders.
Thank you very much, everyone. We have 1 minute to go, and it has been an amazing discussion. I personally have learned a lot. I can't wait to implement some of the things that have been discussed and shared here. So in the 1 minute remaining, hopefully we'll manage. I would like our panelists to just close off by each one of them giving us a quote that they love, which they feel inspires agility. Any favorite quote that inspires agility?
Yes, I do have one. I don't remember who said it because it's a Chinese name, but it says, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. And that is what's going to describe your agile journey. It is definitely the incremental steps that you are going to take that are going to count more You might find that 1,000 steps turns into 1,000,000 steps, but valuing each small, tiny achievement rather than focusing on what's wrong, that's what's going to help you get through that. So yeah, don't rush it. It's not going to happen over time. These companies that have been trying to be fully agile for the last 5 years, so it's not going to happen just like that. But what's important is remain flexible. Just focus on those small steps that you need to take to get to where you need.
Yeah, I think so. Mine is actually, I've already done a couple of quotes today about you can only be as agile as your least agile department, and then the the fast fish eating the slow fish. But I think just from my perspective, and this is my own, what drives me every day, and it's not only for individuals but for companies, remain relevant. Just remain relevant. The world is changing around you all the time, and if you don't change with it, you are no longer going to remain relevant. The skills required, the jobs that are changing. I think the World Economic Forum Jobs Report 2020 says that the jobs that we'll be working with in 2025, 50% of them don't even exist at the moment. So how do we remain relevant around that in businesses as well? One of my big clients, and I'm going to, well, we haven't gone on with them yet, but we in discussions, and I'm going to mention them, as British American Tobacco. They are going away from selling tobacco, okay, because they realize that that's not the way of the future. So remain relevant is all I can say at the end of the day.
I would say be stubborn about your goals. I think as a team, you always have to look at what are your goals for that particular period of time and be stubborn about them. And by stubborn, I mean, are you going to follow them? Are you going to go the rigid way? Are you going to follow a rigid plan? So be stubborn about your goals, break them down into smaller manageable tasks, work together towards your goals as a team, and always ensure you have the end goal in mind. Even as you are delivering, and also adapt to change. Don't always follow a rigid plan, like I mentioned. Always adapt to change and be open-minded about how you approach your tasks and deliverables. So yeah, adapting to change and being stubborn about your goals. That's one of my quotes to close it.
Thank you very much. I guess this is the time I would like to thank you all, dear participants, for joining us and participating in the discussion. Miles, Sue, Pendo, Nchimunya, thank you very much, and pleasant evening or good morning, depending where you are joining us from.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good